We're so lucky to have Clio involved with this, and they really inspired me to think about, well, why don't we do a pop-up session here? Because a lot of times we get emails like Clio sent out or Sierra sent out about this issue, but sometimes we forget to actually write the comments. So this is a good opportunity for us to actually get down to business and take a couple minutes and write that. So Susan, I'm going to turn this over to you. And if you like me, when you just tell me I'm going to be running the slideshow here, so let me know if you've got some, you want me to go ahead and share this out, or you want to
Yeah, you
talk
you
for a
you
minute.
can go ahead. I didn't, make some fancy slide presentation, but some, basic things that will help folks. I've been working on in my climate and energy work against offshore drilling for quite some time. In 2018, I helped to lead with the Florida Wildlife Federation a campaign where we put a ban on nearshore drilling in the state constitution. So this came through the Constitutional Revision Commission, which they've since gotten rid of. It was grouped with vaping. So to put a ban on vaping, what's called workplace smoking, but they grouped them together. So the offshore drilling, which was very strange, because in 2008, with 8 days left of a 60-day legislative session, noting the legislative session started today, just so you know, they took what was called a strike all amendment to a memorial to Congress, which is kind of an innocuous, uh, suggestion, not a law. And they substituted to lift the nearshore ban on drilling in state waters. That's 10 miles to the shore. That ban had been in place for decades. And interestingly enough, in the 70s, when they had dug a bunch of 27 different wells in this very nearshore area, there was no oil. So in 2008, those of us, on the inside, if you will, knew that it really wasn't about oil and nearshore, but it was about setting this up, what we're going to talk about. Because if the Florida legislature folded and allowed offshore drilling that's 10 miles to the shore, that was going to uh, put a hole in the work of, and this in Florida historically has been bipartisan. So that time, Mel Martinez, Senator Bill Nelson, they were working together across the aisle. But anyway, that passed handily in 2018, so we have that protection. So let's go to the next slide because I want to show you guys a map of where. Whoops. Oh, I don't know. Can we move that over, Scott? So the proposal by BOEM deals with Alaska, California, there you go, and Florida. Thank you for that. The high tech stuff is not my strong suit. We're going to focus on the Gulf of Mexico, I prefer to call it. So as I mentioned, we have a ban out to 10 miles. For decades, Florida in the Gulf Coast was protected out to 234 miles. And go ahead and go to the next slide quickly, and you can see the territory in Alaska. Again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. That's equally important, particularly from a climate point of view. But we're in Florida, so we'll focus there. And yeah, there you can see it. I mean, look at this. Can you imagine? And as you sometimes have these cascading impacts, right? So as the warmer, things are warmer, we're having less ice. So that's one of the reasons I think there are some who are not opposed to warming our climate because they see that as an economic opportunity, very much like Greenland, which, by the way, is 81% ice. And when and if Greenland melts, that will give us 24 feet of sea level rise, like so not sustainable. So go to the next slide so you can see the map of the continental US. So you see they want to call it Gulf of America Program A, and you see B, that's how they're moving it nearer to the shore. So I wanted, for people to be aware of that. There are a lot of advocates that understand there's about 2,200 leases open and out already up for grabs. So there is a very strong argument that we don't really need to do this. We don't really need to expand at a time. And when, if you, anybody watched that meeting with the oil company execs with President Trump, and literally ExxonMobil's like, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze here, because they've twice sort of set up industry infrastructure only to have it taken from them. So, there's another set of politics layered with it, but, there's sort of questions about whether it makes sense anyway. Electric vehicles, the need for oil for so many things. There are some things and kinds of equipment or kinds of vehicles that, haven't been electrified. So it's not to say we don't need any oil, but we don't necessarily need more oil. Electric car, EV adoption is going crazy. A lot of people don't realize this. Florida is the second largest market for electric vehicles. And when you have markets, you're influencing what the need is. So there's even a question of the need and why would we, what I always think of is, risk the goose that lays the golden egg, especially for Florida. Our biggest industry is tourism, right? There's just a lot at risk by doing this risky drilling. And we learned, and, obviously I was deeply engaged. I mentioned the 2008 legislature when they were trying to lift the ban. And when they were in the conversation about all that, all of a sudden we have the Deepwater Horizon, oil spill. It was sort of interesting because they had pulled that proposal back. And then literally days later, the Deepwater Horizon had that explosion. Let's go back up to the top because I did have some talking points. So I want to make sure I didn't miss anything, but I wanted you to be able to visualize. Go back. Yeah, a couple there you go. So just wanted you to know what the piece is. And it's not just Florida. We fought this off. One of the protections that we've really had in Florida has been around the Panhandle and all the military bases because they do a lot of practice and drills with military operations, and that's really primarily kept us safe. So for my decades on this issue, the thing that I constantly would hear about is an area about 30 miles off of the Panhandle called Destin Dome, which has a lot of gas deposits. From what I see in those maps, I'm not sure they're even getting at that. So it's a little bit perplexing, and I suppose I wouldn't be so cynical if I hadn't observed myself that whole move to drill a nearshore when there isn't any oil there. At the time, they were promising, nonprofit groups, royalties from oil drilling. I mean, they were doing everything they could, but the industry's been looking at this, for quite some time. So let's drop down. So you've seen sort of the Alaska area. You've now seen Florida and California, and this is something that I want to make sure everyone carries into their conversations, particularly those of you that are on the East Coast. So yeah, go down one more slide, and I want to show you the Gulf Stream. So a lot of people don't realize this, but if there is a spill in the Eastern Gulf, it can get picked up by this Gulf Stream. And my fondest desire is for President Trump to literally see this slide or an equivalent, sort of model, because where is the Gulf Stream closest to Florida, but literally Palm Beach County? And so it's and I have in a slide or two tweet from Rick Scott. This is a non-partisan issue. I was just reading a statement by Congressman Vern Buchanan from Sarasota, just south of where I am. I'm in the Pinellas County in the Tampa Bay area. And he's dead set against this. Even in 2020, when Trump initially talked about expanding drilling, they ended up pulling that back. Ron DeSantis opposes this. Byron Donalds, who's Donald Trump's endorsed candidate to be governor, Rick Scott is against this. So it's not partisan, but we just need to make enough noise to push this back. So I think the Gulf Stream is really important. I myself have been reaching out to the mayor of Fort Lauderdale and, people in Palm Beach County and their sustainability office again, because I think most people don't realize because it's, oh, well, that's just the Gulf. Well, it's not just the Gulf. If there's a spill, and there are always spills when it comes to oil drilling, it's just a risky, sort of dirty process. So go to the next slide. I think we're going to get a Rick's here, but it is comforting or helpful. Okay, well, here's how you comment on it. So this is what we're going to do, which is maybe Scott, let's put that regulation in the chat so
Right.
everybody can go to the comment period. And
Um, yeah, I don't think I can do that until we stop share. Do you want to finish that up or do you want to, do you want to
um,
stop the show now and then
well,
go, I
let's
can
go to the
post
next
it.
slide, however
Okay.
you want to do it. I mean, once you just open up the slides, you ought to be able to click on the regulations, and it's pretty simple. So I just put together, some
Oh,
talking
okay.
points for folks. Petroleum is a global market. Just by opening up, or even the Venezuela idea that somehow getting more oil is going to lower costs. It's not necessarily going to lower costs. So there's a lot of kind of fallacies in here. For me, it's coastal communities. It's why would we risk our important tourism economy, people's health, fishing, recreation. Our University of South Florida, their marine sciences department, they've been doing a lot of research on just the toxicity of the fish that were impacted by Deepwater Horizon because it gets in their system. So, why would we want to do that? So we can just scroll through these
Okay.
sort of quickly so people just got an idea. I mean, I always think when you do these kinds of things, I would speak to what you're most passionate about. So if you're my family and I, fish all the time or whatever, it is, but there's always going to be sort of toxic discharges from the process of oil drilling. Um, and we have alternatives. So for me, who've been working on it a long time, I mean, we can say things now about the lessening of the need to drill for more oil because of where we are with electric vehicles. I mean, I've been driving fully electric since 2018. It's cheaper, it's cleaner. I don't have to go to the gas station. And it's just it's a much better driving experience. Has anybody not driven an electric vehicle? Because we should make sure to get everybody behind the wheel of a car. I mean, it's extraordinary. It has so many fewer moving parts that the torque is, like if you're you wanted the feeling of race car driving. I mean, you kind of get it with that. Very little maintenance, again, because there's so much fewer moving parts. You don't even have to care as much about mileage because there's so much fewer moving parts. So it's really a better mousetrap for people. People have to get over the range anxiety, and like I said, I've been driving fully electric since 2018, and it's once you figure out what you're doing, you can manage, especially if you don't go a lot of places, because 80% of driving happens at home. So we don't really need the oil in the way that we used to. The risk is all too great, and we have really all the Republican leaders. I don't know so much that President Trump is sort of for this, but, and I think that they like to go out with sort of a bigger proposal and then maybe pull back and so on. And there's some gamesmanship in there. But if you care about wildlife, if you care about fishing, if you're a surfer, whatever your connection, to the water or the state of Florida is, I think, I would go with that. So let's keep going through the slides because I want to make sure if everybody has questions. I mean, this is an example. Rick Scott is generally not, forward-minded, progressive on anything, and he's strongly opposed to that. So let's stop sharing. We can put the regulation in And I just
Sure.
wanted to see if you guys had questions or any thoughts about the issue itself, or just making a comment in there.
Let me,
Yeah, Scott's going to put it's a link to regulations.gov, and it'll go right to where it is, and it's like
yeah,
enter your
let
comments. So
me
it's
do
not
that. Let me
challenging
make
or
sure I'm
difficult
right.
in that way.
That's the actual comment page. Is that's so you can add your comments there if you click on it. Hey, Tom.
Yeah, there you go. Anybody have any questions? There you go.
Yeah.
Mara, your hand's
Hi.
up.
Thanks for being here with us. My question is just if we're going to start working on comments, is there a limit? Like how long should we write? Should it just be short, sweet, to the point? I mean, what are your suggestion on how that works?
I would say just fairly short and sweet and to the point, but don't feel constrained, whatever you want to do there. Um, I think it's, some of this is a numbers game and then, once you've done that, who can you get tomorrow or the next day, whether it's a call to an elected official or a friend or whatever, someone like, oh, so and so goes fishing every year in the Gulf, people who are going to care about that. So it's a numbers game. So we want basically as many comments as possible, but it doesn't need to be long-winded per se.
I'm, I'm dropping some of the points from your slides into the chat room in case people want to take a look at those
Yeah.
and take something out of that. And, again, I think your suggestion about kind of writing your own take on some of these, they not going to help be too helpful if you put the exact wording in. It's just sort of, what do
Yeah.
you feel about this issue that you want to express to them?
That's correct. And you did put in the chat a link to the Florida delegation letter. So there is a delegation letter with every member of Congress
Right.
signed to Donald Trump. So like I said, there's just unanimous opposition to this. So which is nice. I'm not normally on the same side of it as everybody, but so it's nice to have company for a change.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and actually, if there are no more questions, I'm just gonna, let's take a few minutes and then,
Let's do it.
go to that page and put in your comments. I mean, one thing I learned on Saturday, which I guess I hadn't thought about so much anymore, is that the ocean produces at least 50% of our oxygen. So if you get from all these phytoplankton basically. And so if you're dumping a lot of oil in there from one of these spills and it's killing some of these plankton, that kind of reduces our oxygen levels.
And the heat, another climate impact of the warming water makes that worse as well, right? So everything is amplified. So no, it's we're messing up. I mean, look at these coral bleaches are just frightening and pretty extraordinary what's going on. So yeah, I think anybody here in the East, sort of East Coast where you might have a relationship with the mayor, I feel pretty strongly that if we could lift up that Gulf Stream situation and recognize that this could go right to Mar-a-Lago or, Fort Lauderdale or whatever, because other than that, I just see people are kind of ignorant about that piece of it. Why would they know? And it's really, very important for people to understand that. So again, if you had a few minutes and you're in West Palm, send a note to the mayor of West Palm Beach or to your county commissioner or anyone like that. So anything we can do to amplify after you've done your comment.
Will do.
Hey, I was able to put in a few sentences and did it. I didn't, and it's great to see that they're going to track this comments and incorporate, and when they incorporate them into the final submission, I guess they notify you. So that's pretty interesting. Tom, I bet you've had lots of experience submitting comments on things. I don't know if you did. Did you comment on this before, Tom? No, okay.
I don't know if they'd like you to comment multiple times on the same issue. Um, I figure I will just give it one serious, put a serious comment together and give them my best shot.
Okay. Susan, you have any thoughts about that? Do you know if do they look, I mean, does it matter if you make multiple comments or did they prefer you do a one thing time thing or
Yeah, I don't think it's would matter. I don't imagine that they like check addresses or, kind of do that. I think it becomes more 20,001, 20,002, I think that's what ends up happening with that. So if you're moved, they'll do some organizations will do an organizational letter. Some will do a coalition, right, of groups of orgs, and then individuals. Again, I prefer do it as many times as you want to and think it makes some sense. And, that's mine. And it again doesn't need to be long. In fact, I just attached uh the file. It says upload a file, and I put that slide in for the Gulfstream, right?
Oh,
So
right.
it's again, is anyone going to look at it? Who knows? But if you don't have comments, and this is, when we do things at the Florida Public Service Commission, we're sending comments in, all of these things, the endangerment finding, at EPA, we've all been doing endangerment, comments on that. So